Mark, you've been covering the NBA for a while. How weird was this whole DeAndre Jordan situation?
Yeah, you know how it is with the last kind of saga that you cover. You always think that was the craziest thing we've ever seen. But for sure, the player involvement in it took it to a whole new level. I mean, you've been doing this as long or longer than me. You know, I mean, it's gone beyond the, hey, I'm going to go talk to that guy because he's a great interview. I mean, these guys are writing their own storylines now with the emojis and, Pierce tweeting, this is what I came here for. And it's like the players are as aware of the ongoing coverage and are trying to wedge their way into it, which is just absolute insanity.
Is there a legitimate concern, Mark, that other players will say, boy, I didn't realize I can do this. I'm going to try to take advantage of this now.
Here's the thing. It's definitely a concern around the league, and it's not just the Mavericks who are crying foul here. A lot of people around the league are upset about the moratorium, and there's going to be discussion about it. There's no question. There's going to be more talk about free agency and a brighter light shined on free agency, I think, than we've had for a while. But it's not an easy fix because the league's contention is there's a functional reason for the moratorium, and that's because the league needs those 7, 8, or 9 days, and the number does tend to vary. It's not always 9 days like it was this time. The league needs that time to conduct an audit, to set the salary cap, and to figure out the luxury tax. But the other reason the league wants it, the unspoken reason, is they like a period where there can't be any signings because they don't want us to just – they don't want free agency to start July 1st so these teams can hatch illegal deals before there's any real free agency that can go on. Like, the league's belief is the Milwaukee Bucks never have a chance to beat the Knicks for Greg Monroe if there's not a moratorium period. The league's belief is that levels the playing field. That gives the Bucks a chance because the Knicks can't just throw all this money at Monroe and sign him on day one. And it gives everybody a voice. But there's also problems with it. Episodes last night, it's a problem. It just encourages dishonesty and, the whole verbal agreement, handshake agreement. Yesterday, it was incredibly entertaining, but not an overall good advertisement for the NBA, I would say.
Talking to ESPN.com senior NBA writer Marc Stein. Mark, we were just talking before you came on, and the thing that bothers me the most, Jordan has every right to change his mind. Everybody has a right to change their mind, and whether you want to say, well, his word's not good, that's up to everybody to give their own opinion. But what I think is inexcusable and inexplicable, why wouldn't he pick up a phone and take Mark Cuban's phone call and just say right directly, Mark Cuban, I've changed my mind? He comes off to me as gutless. Is there some other reason behind this that we don't know?
No, and you're totally right. It's inexplicable. I mean, there's no defense for it because they still haven't heard from him. They still haven't heard from DeAndre Jordan.
Awful.
A week ago, they gave him $80 million. He waits 5 days before the about face. Now, we've seen players change their mind before, but it usually happens a day later. As recently as 2013 or 2012, 2013, Jason Kidd told the Mavericks he was coming back. He ended up going to the Knicks. But that all happened in the space of a few hours. The Mavericks were able to deal with it, move on, and recover. The Mavericks gave this guy all their cap space. He and Wesley Matthews thought their free agency was over, were filling in the cracks at the end of the roster with minimum money, and then 5 days later, now they find out that this guy is not coming to Dallas. They have no way to replace him, and they still haven't had any communication with him. It's just not right. I mean, a handshake deal is not binding, but, yeah, you're right. You'd like to think there's a phone call involved, a text back, some sort of explanation. I think Mark Cuban, at the very least, deserves an explanation why he did this, and they still don't have it.
All right, Mark, what's the NBA's retort? What do they do about it to avoid this happening in the future?
They're not going to do anything about that. Verbal agreements in the NBA are verbal agreements. The league is very explicit about that. All of these deals, we saw from July 1st to July 7th, we saw more than 70 guys commit to these same kind of verbal deals. That's a frenzy that I can't recall. That many agreements in that, basically averaging 10 a day. If you remember last year, this time last summer, LeBron, Bosh, Carmelo, there was a huge bottleneck as all the big names were deciding, and these guys took longer than anybody expected. It really created a bottleneck effect, and it took longer for us to get through all these free agent names. But all of those deals, and they're all going to end up getting done except one.
You know, Mark, how about the moves that didn't happen that might have? If DeAndre Jordan had gone to the Clippers right from go? What are the ripple effects, from the people you've talked to, from what you know about this free agent landscape? What are some of the actual moves that may have happened had we known all along that Jordan was going back to the Clippers rather than to Dallas?
The Mavs possibly get into the Robin Lopez mix. You definitely would have seen the Mavs at least talk seriously with Indiana about trading for Roy Hibbert, because don't forget, Monte Ellis is signing with the Indiana Pacers. So there was a definite sign and trade possibility there where the Mavs take Hibbert back, and a sign and trade for Monte Ellis might have made Monte Ellis more money. At least, look, the options for the Mavericks weren't sensational on July 3rd. If DeAndre Jordan decides to go to the Clippers right off the bat, but they were certainly better than they are now, where there really are no options. There is just nowhere for Dallas to go. And look, and why did the Clippers act with such desperation? Because they were the team that was wrecked if Jordan does go to Dallas. Because the Clippers, because of their financial situation and having no cap flexibility, they were the team that was. I mean, both of these teams, their immediate futures were absolutely riding on getting DeAndre Jordan.
All right, now final.
Go for it.
I'm sorry, Mark.
No worries. Go for it.
In the final thing, he chose the Mavericks for a reason, and we heard all the rumors that he and Chris Paul don't get along, blah, 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 blah. He was unsure if Griffin was going to come back in 2 years. Chris Paul's part of the contingent. I thought they didn't like each other. What happened?
I think that's still real. I don't think they've put all the problems aside, but apparently whatever Chris said in the meeting was persuasive enough to convince DeAndre that Chris does want him on the team. He wants him there, wants to go forward with him. They, consider him a big part of the franchise, and it apparently was enough. Now, I don't think that was the driving force to convince DeAndre to go back. I think in the grand scheme, he got back to Houston, where he's from, where he lives in the offseason. He got back to Houston, and I believe just a lot of people were questioning, why are you leaving the Clippers? Why are you leaving L.A. to go to Dallas? And he started second-guessing the decision himself. And I really think it's more comfort level in L.A. that led him back than anything else. And I was saying this before the Mavs got the first verbal commitment. DeAndre Jordan is known to really love Hollywood, love L.A., love Clipperland, love everything about it. And I thought all that was going to be tough for him to leave, and in the end, I think it was tough for him to leave. I think he went back to Houston, got around his family, and they started thinking, did I make the right decision here? And that's kind of what set all this in motion.